There is a quiet restlessness that lives in some people. It is not the loud anxiety of the world, but a gentle, persistent hum beneath the surface of their quietest moments. It asks, "What's next?" It refuses to settle. For the ambitious mind, peace is not found in arrival, but in the pursuit itself. They are not running from something. They are walking toward a version of themselves that only exists in the distance. It begins long before the world notices, before the titles, the achievements, the public validation. It begins as a subtle sensation, an internal weather pattern that is theirs alone to navigate. For the person with an ambitious mind, the world often looks at the result, the finished product, the conquered summit, and mistakes it for the fuel. But the fuel is something else entirely. It is not a desire for applause. It is, more accurately, a deep and private discomfort with standing still. There is a specific silence that exists in the moments after a goal is met. The room is quiet. The phone stops buzzing. The thing that was once a distant dream is now a present reality. And in that silence, the ambitious mind does not feel triumph. They feel a strange, hollow spaciousness. It is not ingratitude. It is simply that their internal compass has already swung north again, pointing toward a new horizon. They are, by nature, creatures of the not yet. The present tense, for all its beauty, has never felt like home. This is the paradox they carry. To the outside observer, their life is a series of peaks. But from the inside, it is a continuous rolling terrain. The satisfaction is not in standing on the peak and looking down, but in the physical memory of the climb, the burn in the muscles, the focus in the eyes, the quiet conversation with oneself that says, "Keep going." The achievement is merely a photograph. Striving is life. They are often misunderstood as hungry for more. But the truth is more tender. They are not hungry for things. They are hungry for the feeling of becoming. And that feeling, elusive and addictive, only ever lives one step ahead. Every drive has a birthplace, though it is rarely a single, dramatic moment. More often, it is a climate, an atmosphere in the early years that made striving feel like survival, or made achievement synonymous with love. For some, ambition grows in the soil of expectation. Parents who glanced at a B+ with an unspoken disappointment that filled the room more than any shout ever could. The message, delivered not in words but in silences, was clear. You are loved when you excel. For others, it is born in the opposite space. In the chaos of unpredictability, achievement becomes the one thing they can control. When the external world feels unsafe or unstable, the internal world of goals and progress becomes a sanctuary. To plan, to execute, to achieve. These are not just actions, but anchors. They are proof of agency in a life that may have felt, at some point, helpless. And then there are those for whom ambition is simply a temperament, a natural, inexplicable orientation toward the new. As children, they were the ones taking apart the clock to see how it worked, or asking the questions that had no easy answers. Their drive was never about filling a void, but about following a quiet curiosity that burned brighter than it did for others. It was not a reaction to the world, but a natural extension of who they were. But regardless of its origin, the seed is planted early. The stem that breaks the surface years later, visible to everyone, is only the smallest part of the story. Below the soil, a root system of old wounds, old lessons, and old adaptations runs deep. The ambitious mind, in its relentless push forward, is often unknowingly watering a garden planted long ago. To understand the ambitious mind, one must look not at the stars they reach for, but at the circuitry within. The brain, that 3-pound universe, is wired with a system designed to propel them forward. At its center is a small, powerful molecule, dopamine. Popular culture has simplified it as the pleasure chemical, but its role is far more nuanced and, for the striver, far more defining. Dopamine is not primarily about the moment of reward. It is about the anticipation of reward. It is the neurological currency of wanting, of seeking, of the maybe that lies just ahead. For the ambitious person, this system hums at a higher frequency. Their brain releases dopamine, not when they achieve the goal, but during the pursuit, when they are planning the project, imagining the outcome, taking the next step into the unknown. The pleasure is in the chase. This creates a fascinating neurological paradox. When the goal is finally reached, the dopamine surge often subsides. The very system that propelled them there quiets down, leaving that familiar, hollow spaciousness. The brain, addicted to the seeking, is momentarily without a quest, and so it begins to look for the next one. This is not a character flaw. It is a biological inheritance. The brain is saying, the hunt is over. Find another. It explains why the artist feels most alive during the messy creation, not at the gallery opening. Why the entrepreneur thrives in the uncertainty of the startup, not the stability of the established company. Their minds are optimized for the horizon, not the destination. They are, in a very real sense, chemically designed to fall in love with the road, even as they tell themselves they are walking toward a specific door. There is a cost to being pulled forward so constantly. It is not a cost the world sees, for it is paid in a currency the world does not trade in. The ambitious mind, for all its momentum, often carries a quiet exhaustion that sleep cannot cure. It is the fatigue of a mind that does not know how to power down, a screen that never quite goes black, only dims. The conflict lives in the small moments. A quiet evening with nothing planned should feel like a gift. Instead, it feels like a holding cell. The urge to open the laptop, to check the email, to just make a quick note about an idea. These are not distractions. They are compulsions. Rest, for the ambitious, can feel like a betrayal of potential. To sit still is to hear the voice that whispers, you could be doing more. And that voice is relentless. Then there is the loneliness of the path. Ambition, by its nature, often requires walking where few others are. The late nights, the singular focus, the conversations about things that do not interest those who love them. They can be in a room full of people and feel the distance. Not because they are arrogant, but because a part of them is always somewhere else. Planning, solving, reaching. The people around them want to connect with who they are now. But the ambitious mind is already living in who they are trying to become. This is the inner friction. The war between the drive that gives their life meaning and the simple human need for peace, for presence, for rest. They are their own harshest taskmaster and their most devoted follower, often unsure if the voice pushing them forward is a mentor or a warden. The engine never stops. But engines, if never cooled, will eventually crack. It does not arrive as a crisis. There is no dramatic collapse, no burning out in a public blaze. For most, the turning point comes softly, in a moment so ordinary it could easily be missed. A Sunday afternoon with nothing to do. A vacation where the Wi-Fi is weak. A conversation with an old friend who asks, not about what they are doing, but about how they are being. And in that spaciousness, a question finally breaks the surface. What am I running toward? It is a dangerous question for the ambitious mind, because for so long, the motion itself was the answer. The next goal, the next milestone, the next summit, these provided a constant, reliable purpose. But in the stillness, the question lingers. If the striving stopped tomorrow, who would be left? Beneath the achievements, beneath the titles and the plans, is there a self that knows how to simply exist? This moment is not a rejection of ambition. It is a separation of it. For the first time, the ambitious person glimpses the difference between the drive that comes from a place of genuine passion and the drive that comes from a place of quiet fear. They begin to see that some goals were chosen by them, and some were chosen for them by expectation, by comparison, by a version of themselves that thought success would finally feel like enough. The horizon they have been chasing for so long does not disappear. But for the first time, they stop running long enough to ask if they are choosing the direction, or if the direction is simply choosing them. It is a terrifying pause. And it is also, quietly, the beginning of something new. The healing does not come from extinguishing the fire. That is a common misunderstanding. That peace for the ambitious requires becoming someone they are not. But asking a striver to stop striving is like asking a river to stop flowing. It is not in their nature. The healing, instead, comes from how they hold the flame. From learning to carry it without being burned. It begins with a simple, difficult practice, learning to arrive. Not to arrive at the goal, but to arrive in the moment before the goal. To feel the satisfaction not in the finished product, but in the act of creation itself. To sit with a cup of coffee and not reach for the phone. To take a walk and not track the steps. These are not rejections of ambition. They are rebellions against the tyranny of next. They are small acts of presence that remind the mind, you are allowed to be here now. Slowly, the relationship shifts. The goals remain. The drive remains. But the identity untangles itself from the outcome. Failure becomes information, not indictment. A setback becomes a detour, not a verdict on their worth. They begin to see that they were never just the sum of their achievements. They were always the one choosing the climb. And that chooser, the awareness behind the ambition, deserves the same care and attention as the path ahead. This is the integration. Not ambition versus peace, but ambition and peace. The drive becomes a companion, not a commander. The mind still looks toward the horizon, but it no longer forgets to notice the ground beneath its feet. And in that noticing, something shifts. The pursuit becomes less about proving and more about expressing. Less about arriving and more about becoming, fully and gently, right where they are. And so the ambitious mind arrives, finally, at a different kind of destination. It is not a place on any map, not a milestone to be checked off. It is a quiet understanding, earned through years of striving and the courage to pause. The realization that the horizon they have been chasing was never somewhere out there. It was always, somehow, inside them. They see it now with clarity. The restlessness that once felt like a burden was also the source of their deepest aliveness. The dissatisfaction with standing still was not a flaw to be fixed, but a language, a way their soul communicated its need to grow, to stretch, to become more of itself. They were not broken for wanting more. They were simply built to evolve. The path forward looks different now. The goals are still there, but they are held more lightly. The ambition has not diminished, but it has softened. It no longer drives them with the sharp edge of proving. It moves them with the quiet pull of purpose. They work not because they need to feel worthy, but because creation is how they breathe. They rest not because they have earned it, but because rest, too, is a form of becoming. In the end, the ambitious mind learns what the river has always known, that the purpose is not to reach the sea. The purpose is the flowing itself. The movement, the growth, the constant, gentle becoming. This is not the means to an end. That is the whole point. And in that knowing, they finally find what they were always looking for, not a summit to conquer, but a peace that can walk beside them all the way home. If you've made it to the end of this reflection, we'd love to know where in the world you're watching from. Drop your city or country in the comments. Let's see how far this message travels. And if this story resonated, please like and subscribe to Psyche for more explorations of the human heart.